Hello, young artists. We are here today. We are going to be doing an ink painting, and we've been studying Ni Zan from the Yuan Period in Chinese history, and we're making a hanging tapestry today. I did a quick one to try it out ahead of time, just a really quick one, and then I will walk through the steps with you. I have a guest with me today. I brought my daughter Sienna. Can you say hi, Sienna?
Hi.
To paint along with us, so you can see me going through the steps here, and you can watch her going through the steps as well. So you can just see sort of two different people doing it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, talk about the things that we have. We have the ink. We're going to be just dipping in ink using kind of a dry brush technique. If you look at his painting here, the darker spots, that's where there's, he's barely got any ink on the brush that's starting to dry. And he just lets the paper kind of bleed through as he does the brush strokes on there to show where the tree trunk is and some of the darker spots where maybe it's in shadow. And then in the mountains in the distance, and then to get the blending for the shading, he dips in a little bit of water to just blend it out here and there, but it's really subtle. Most of the painting is just the openness of the paper showing through to suggest the expanse of water that's happening in here, or the sky. So we're going to try and do that today. Okay, so we're just going to go through step by step. There's some different size brushes. I have a little one, a medium, and a little bit bigger one. Whatever you have to work with is fine, but I do recommend at least 2 different sizes. And then a paper towel if you need to dry off your brush as you go, or after you put some water on it to get some of the water off your brush so there isn't too much. And then you just need a cup of water as well. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the smallest brush, and I'm going to dip it in my ink. And then as I dip it in the ink, you can show them your bottle if you want there. You just have a little tiny jar. You really don't need much. Just go ahead and get it in on your brush, and then you're just going to kind of rub it on the edge to get most of the ink off of your brush so it's mostly dry. You can also, if you want, if you start going and it seems like there's too much on there, you can rub it on your paper towel. Okay, so then first thing we're going to do is we're just looking at the shapes of the mountains in the background. So we're going to start just on the left here, and I'm just going to draw about a third of the paper down. I'm just going to draw really light, just a mountain shape like that. So go ahead and do that one. Yep, good. Good, and then I'm going to go starting kind of in the middle of it down below. I'm going to start another one that's going to go up and down again. You guys can paint right along with us. I'm just kind of doing the outline of the shapes. And it looks like this one, it maybe continues down this way and over like that. Good. And then the one that's back here, it looks like it doesn't quite reach all the way down here, so I'm going to start it about here and go up. And oh, my brush is starting to run out of ink, and actually that looks really nice to the texture of the paper coming through there. So I'm just kind of scrubbing it as I go. And now it's pretty much gone, so I'm going to dip again. If yours is starting to run out, you can dip again. And remember to brush most of that off on the edge. And I'm going to try and go back in here really lightly so it doesn't look too jarring. That. And just off the side. Okay, so we have kind of the outline of the mountains in the distance. Okay, then I'm going to stick my brush in my water here. To get some of the blending, I'm going to dip in the water. Which mountains? I'll wait for her to get caught up here. Great. Okay, then you can take your medium-sized brush or your little bit bigger one and dip in the water. And we're going to go along in a few of the spots, and if it's too dry and it doesn't pull up for you to blend, you can go ahead and dip just a little bit on the edge where you've been drying your brush off, and then dip a little in the water so it has some ink and some water on it, and then go ahead and there we go. I'll start to blend here and there. You don't have to go too much, so I'm going to go just like that along the edge and maybe pull some in, and here where it meets Just look back and forth at your reference image of his Rongxi Studio. If I'm saying that correctly, I'm just doing my best. I don't speak Chinese. Okay, and then I'm dipping back in the water again, and I'm just sort of blending by scrubbing it like that. Good. Okay, good job. So we're just going to go along here and try to do any other places where there's a little bit of blending happening here for shadows, and then some horizontal lines to make it look like where the landscape hits the water edge. So we're going to go ahead and do that.
Let us dwell in you, you are our rock, or defense that can't be moved.
Yeah, and you might want to add a little bit more water to yours because it's getting pretty dry. And if it seems like it's disappearing too much, you might want to add a tiny bit of ink and then dip directly in the water, so that it doesn't, as it dries, disappear all the way.
We trust in you, give you our hearts. You're my refuge through the way.
Okay, I'm going to do a few more of the horizontal lines down in the front now.
Refuge through the weight.
And I'm just letting the paper bleed right through. And this is just craft paper we're using. If you don't have craft paper but you have brown paper bags, it's the same thing. So you can just cut apart a brown paper bag and use that as well.
You're my refuge, I'll cling to you. You know where I've been.
Good. Yeah, I would say try to get a little bit more in the front there. Image here, where it just gets a little bit thicker down here. That's looking really good. So maybe dip in your water just a tiny bit more to get it a little bit wetter because it's not blending much for you. But each of these is your own, so you make it your own however you want. So if you like the way it's looking, just go ahead and leave it and don't need to mess with it.
And you know where I go.
Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw in some tree trunks. You see down in the foreground here, there's a few trees on these rocks that are in the water. So we're going to go ahead and do that down here. Our paper's a little bit shorter than his scroll was, so we're just going to make it the trees just a little, not as tall, just a little shorter too. So take your smallest brush again, and we're just going to sparingly put some trees down there. Dip in your ink.
Every day
Good job. And I'm going to start with the tree that's farthest on the left and then work my way to the right so that I'm not smudging it with my hand as I go. It dries pretty fast, but still we want to be careful. So I'm just going to go ahead and start about here, and I'm going to go in and up like that. Great. And I'm going to do another line that's next to it, and as it gets near the top, it gets closer and closer and closer and just disappears together. Good. And then there's a few branches about halfway up coming off this way. And it looks like there's one that kind of goes off the paper some over here. That one is a little bit wider, so I'll do 2 lines for that one. And then there's another thin one up here. Another one over here. So just go ahead and put some branches on there. And then remember they get a little bit smaller and closer together as you get to the top. Great, great tree. All right, now this one next to it, it looks a little bit smaller and doesn't have many leaves on it, so it just looks like a dark tree trunk back there. So I'm going to make a little baby tree back there, a little farther back. Let's just get one trunk going up this way with a couple branches coming off of it, like that. Great. Okay, then there's another one that's next to it. We'll go ahead and do that one. This one here. You're so quiet. Are you having a good time?
Yeah.
Great. My kids usually concentrate pretty hard when they do art, so they're not too talkative. This one just has a few really vertical branches, it looks like. Okay, I'm going to put another smaller one back there. And then one more big one down in the front. Okay, great. Now before we do the branches, how are you feeling? One more to do?
The big one yet?
Okay, got one more to do. We'll wait for you.
I wait on you. You hear my every cry in your hand.
Okay, before we do any leaves on our tree, we're going to go ahead and put in a little bit of rocks and brush that's down below it. So if you notice on here, each of these, it looks like it just ends and then it kind of trails off to the sides either way. So we're just going to start again from the left and work our way right, making little hills as we go. Okay, so I'm going to dip in my ink, brush off most of it, just very lightly brush on there some hills. I'm kind of bouncing my brush a little so it looks a little rougher terrain.
Let us dwell in you. You are our rock, a defense that can't be moved.
And so as you go across here, you can think about where does the hill meet on the other side of the tree. So I just skipped over that and try to keep it in the same area to make it look like there's a hill behind that tree. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yeah. And there's one more little over here. Good, and then we can blend in some shading. I'll take my medium-sized brush, get a tiny bit of ink on it from the edge of my cup with some water on it, and then just blend in the hills here. It looks like Ni Zan did some blending behind the hills and then down at the bottom to make it look, again, with some horizontal strokes to make it look like there's water down there.
You're my refuge through the waves, refuge through the waves.
Okay, now before we draw in the leaves, if you notice in here there is a little, this is the studio I think he's talking about in his title of his painting. His paintings usually have landscape with just maybe one piece of architecture or something to suggest that humans are there somewhere, but there's never any people in his paintings. So we're going to just draw just the general outline of this. Just keep it totally simplified of the little hut there. So I'm going to take the littlest one, brush again, and it's just sort of like a flattened down triangle, this shape like this, okay? So I'm going to start with that. And I think I want it to look like it's kind of far away, so I'm going to dip in the ink but then add just a tiny bit of water so it's not as dark. And it looks like the front corner of this starts at this outside tree trunk, so I'm going to go up and over like that. So let's try that. So let's go up and down, and then try to connect them. Good. And then it looks like it goes down a little further and connect over there. And then there's a tiny bit of perspective here, not much. You can take a little diagonal back this way. Good. And then one parallel with that. And connect those. And then this one's going to be kind of hard because you're going to skip over the tree trunk. You're aiming for this point, so you're going to go this way and jump and go over there. Great job. And then yours actually looks more like his than mine does because he has a little bit of blending happening up there. So good job. And then it just has little tiny legs here, here, and here. It's okay. It'll actually disappear because it looks like it's mostly water. So I'm going to put my little legs here. Let's start with this guy back here. Just one little short leg happening. And then another one. Just make a little rectangle just down a little bit farther because it's with the perspective, this is out a little farther because it's closer to the viewer. And the one over here should be about the same as that. So I'm going to kind of visually think about, okay, right here, it's about that far down. Draw a little rectangle like that. And then this guy that's hiding way back there, the fourth one, I'm just going to kind of pick a point and make a tiny little, almost like a square hiding back in there. Good. Great. So you have your little hut. So then the other thing that we can do before we add in these leaves, because this is farther back, is if you look really closely, sorry, there, we tip it like that, there's a landscape edge of the river that's back there, or the pond, the lake, way back behind the trees. So we're just going to roughly draw that in. Yep, and then if you want, our paper is not as wide as this, so there are more rocks and stuff in here. If you want to put those in, I think that I want it to look like that there's water there, so I'm probably not going to put that in there. But if you want to add in some more things, you can. Make it look more like his picture. So I'm going to start about here and just really lightly dab in the landscape that's hiding back there. And it looks like it comes, and remember to skip over where the trees are because it's behind them, to there. And then, like she said, there's some rocks in there, she noticed. Good eye, Sienna. I'm going to put in a few more rocks here. But I'm not going to have it go all the way to the paper because I want to make it look like there's water. Looks like you might need a little bit more ink. That looks like just water now will disappear, like disappearing ink, right? Invisible ink. Mm-hmm. She's nodding. You can't see her nodding. She's so quiet. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to add a little blending in here. Just here and there. Make it seem like it's farther away. Ready? Okay, then the last thing that's on here, if you look at the way his leaves are, I gotta kind of look really close. They look like he took his brush and went swooping motions downward off of the branches. Sienna said it looked like what to you when you first saw the picture?
Weeping willow.
Kind of like a weeping willow. I don't know if they have those in China, but maybe something like that. But these branches don't go all the way down to the ground, but they just look like the start of a weeping willow. So I'm gonna take probably try my medium one and see if that looks too big, and dip in my ink and my water together a little bit so it's not too dark. And I'm just going to start over here, and I'm going to make little swooping motions down. Yeah, I feel like this brush might be too big, so I'll switch to the smaller one. Whatever you feel like for your picture though. If you want bigger leaves, you can use the bigger one. If you don't, use the smaller one. So starting at the branch, just take a couple swooping motions down.
So every day brings new
kind of holding my brush a little bit on the side, and it's kind of getting some nice texture from the bristles being sideways. And this little guy looks like he doesn't have any leaves on it, so I'm going to leave him bare. If you look at your reference image here, he looks bare. And this one, some of these look like there's some spots of ink here and there, so I might add a few dots of ink like that to just add texture to it. And if at the end you want to go back in and add a little bit of shading to your trees on the side that would be, if you pick your light source, it looks like he's got a light source coming from over here that I'm going to just add in just a little bit of watered down ink on the opposite side of that to make it look shadowed, but with just a little bit of a dry brush. And then there is still also some little dots of ink here and there. So you can add in more texture if you want and keep going, or wherever you think you want to stop, you can do that too. And the last thing, we're not going to put this in our painting because I don't speak Chinese and I don't want to misrepresent the language, but his paintings always have Chinese writing on them, and their characters go top to bottom. We are not going to add that in ours, but if you do speak Chinese and you want to put some Chinese words in there about the amazingness of God's creation or whatever you want to put in there, that would be really great. And then the last thing, these are designed to be hanging scrolls, just like his. So we do have loose skewers and then a piece of thread, and we're going to take a hot glue gun and attach one to the top and one to the bottom, and then we'll be all done. So I will go ahead and do that and then show you guys the final look, and then we'll be done. Cheers. All right. Great job, Sienna. That looks really great. Did you have a good time?
I added in this.
Great. So she added in some extra rocks.
I got a little bit ahead of you when we did the trees, so I just added that in while you were finishing your trees.
It looks great. Awesome. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll show you, and we'll be all done. Okay, great job, guys. Thank you so much.